tourism, as everyone in this room probably knows, is a very big business for Ireland. It generates, this year we're going to generate over 8 billion in economic revenue to the country. It's going to support almost 250,000 jobs and going to generate about 2 billion in exchequer revenue. So very big business, very important. And one of the most important markets in this area is the UK, and the impact of Brexit and the sterling differential in the UK. So therefore, it has a big impact, and it is important to us. In terms of, and there's an awful lot of unknowns about Brexit in terms of what's going to happen to borders, what's going to happen open skies, what's going to happen visa arrangements, etc., etc. And today isn't about speculating about those unknowns. What today is about we wanted to figure out what can we in Fáilte Ireland do now with what we know to help Irish industry be as prepared as they can for the challenges that lie ahead in Brexit. And there is really two key challenges, as Mr. Griffin alluded to, in terms of, first of all, the drop in the UK visitors that we're seeing, primarily as a result of the sterling differential. And these are just some of the numbers. Overall, our visitor numbers from the UK, from Britain, are down 6% this year. Holidaymakers down 9%. And that will equate to, over an annual period, that will equate to 300,000 less visitors from Britain, which will equate to a revenue loss of 88 million. And when we transfer that into a jobs number, that's about 1,900 less jobs in tourism than we would have had we retained the same level of business from Britain as we had last year. So that's 1,900 less jobs than we would have had. Some of those will be lost jobs. Some of those will be jobs that weren't created because we didn't have those same visitors from the UK, in addition to the extra visitors we're getting from the US and mainland Europe and other markets. So that is a very real and significant issue in terms of less visitors from our closest and biggest market. But the flip side to that coin is that, as well as Britain as being our biggest customer, Britain is also our biggest competitor. And the UK has got significantly cheaper for visitors from other markets, and is going to be a much more challenging competitor to compete with when people are deciding where they want to go on their holidays. We are seeing some early signs of value for money ratings beginning to erode. We haven't got kind of proper data yet, but from looking at the raw numbers that are coming through, there is some signs, particularly amongst the German market. We're beginning to see our value for money ratings, early signs of some erosion in our value for money ratings. And this is a critical factor for us. Our good value for money has been a real driver of our growth over recent years, and this is something that we can't let slip. The US dollar to sterling exchange rate is also another key factor in terms of, for now versus about 3 years ago, a holiday based purely on the exchange rate, a holiday in the UK is about 20% cheaper than it was 3 years ago for US visitors because of the dollar to sterling exchange rate. So this means that the UK is already and is going to continue to be a very competitive and a very cost-efficient competitor for us to battle with. And indeed, we're all aware of the capacity issues in our current hotspots, which is in some cases putting domestic inflation pressure into the environment, and that does make it even more difficult for us to compete. So we need to be very conscious of those value for money ratings as we go through that. So there, I suppose, kind of the two things that we know are challenges that are facing us today, and will continue to face us. So we need to say, well, what can we do in order to help support Irish industry be ready to deal with these challenges. There's four, I suppose, high-level areas that I work on in terms of will help Ireland to deal with these challenges. First of all, our visitor experience. When your pricing goes up, you need to make sure your visitor experience gets better. And we do have a very, very good visitor experience, and we get great ratings from, great feedback from our research from visitors about how satisfied they are with the trips in Ireland. But we can't stand still here. We need to continue to improve and develop the visitor experience, whether that's the attractions, the iconic sites, the walks, the access to the countryside, the experience when in hotels and restaurants and bars, etc. We need to keep improving that visitor experience. And that's part of our ongoing work in Fáilte to help support those efforts across the full industry. Secondly, I mentioned the value for money. We need to keep a really strong focus on making sure we provide value for money and that we protect our long-term reputation by having strong value for money offering. Connected intrinsically with value for money is around our capacity, because we do have, at the moment, at peak times a year, in current hotspots, we do have some capacity constraint, and we are losing some business because we don't have the ideal level of capacity. And we're working on doing what we can to support the expansion of that capacity. There is, I think, about over 800 million euros worth of private sector investment that's coming into the Dublin market alone in terms of expansion of that capacity, and that will lead to about 5,000 extra hotel bedrooms here in Dublin alone, and there is a significant expansion in capacity going on all around the country. So over the next couple of years there will be an expansion in capacity. This will help address this issue. It just takes time from when we're a little bit of a victim of our own success in terms of with the growth we've had in tourism numbers. I think it was more than we probably, and indeed the economic recovery was probably more than forecast a number of years ago, and that the capacity and the supply hasn't expanded at a rate, and it takes 3 to 4 years to go from the idea of let's build a hotel to let's get one open. So that is expanding, and that's coming through, and that will be key to helping us in terms of meet the need and also keep value for money. In the meantime, there is capacity within Ireland, absolutely, in terms of when we look around the regions, when we look at the seasons and the shoulder seasons, etc. There is significant spare capacity that we can look to fill, and that regionality and seasonality are themes that feed through everything we do in Fáilte Ireland to try and make sure we leverage the capacity and the ability to grow we have there in the regions and season. We've seen some really good success around the country of doing that, where we are hearing story after story of where towns and accommodation and activity providers and attractions are all saying, well, I'm staying open a couple of weeks longer this year than I was a few years ago. And that makes for a much more sustainable and much more balanced business model if we can achieve that season extension. And the fourth thing, and really what we're here to talk about today, is what we're calling capability. This is around kind of the industry capability. That's really what this program is about, is how do we support industry to have as high capability as possible facing into these challenges of an increased competitive market in Brexit. And that industry capability, we're looking, all the work that, and Paul will take you through this in more detail in a few minutes, but all the work that Paul and Martina and the team did in terms of looking at how can Fáilte best support the industry, what are the key areas we need to focus on. And they came up with, through their own work and their consultation with industry, etc., came up with 4 key areas. The first one is around having competitive business. And this is around when you're facing into that more challenging pricing environment because of the currency movements, you need to work even harder to make sure that your business is competitive. And this is about kind of competitive in terms of revenue management and understanding exposure to revenue risk, and also about helping people benchmark their cost base, etc., and plan to be as competitive as they can be. The second one is market diversification, and this is where trying to put in place the supports to help businesses who may have been previously heavily reliant on the UK market or the domestic market in order to expand into the growing markets. In terms of Tourism Ireland, doing great work marketing Ireland internationally, growing the number of markets that it marketed, doing great work with helping expand air capacity. And this more diverse business mix is where we need to be in the future. It will be a more de-risked environment to work in if we've got a greater spread of our markets. So we want to do what we can to help Irish industry to be ready to leverage those opportunities that are being created by the international marketing, by the increased air access, etc., so that Irish businesses know how to engage with the channels that need to be engaged with in different markets, so that they can access those various distribution channels and various sales platforms, but also in terms of the insights that will be needed to help the visitors from those markets to have a great experience when they come here, because visitors from different markets do have different needs. There are different cultural nuances, and we want to help do what we can to help support the industry to bring those insights to industry so that they're well placed to give great visitor experience when they get those visitors in. The third strand is British market retention. As the Minister said, we absolutely cannot give up on GB. It is our nearest market. It is an incredibly big and valuable market to us. Importantly, going back to the seasonality point, it's also critically important because the seasonal spread of visitors from Britain is flatter than from other markets. So Britain plays a particular role in supporting the shoulder seasons. So for all those reasons, we absolutely do not want to give up on the UK market. We will need to fight harder for it. We need to fight in a more probably a more targeted way and make sure our product can offer. So we want to work with the Irish industry to help them to work on strategies and plans to retain the business from the UK market. And the fourth strand is around people capability in terms of, and this is helping, in terms of, we all know, we hear lots of times, the challenges of staff shortages and skill shortages in the tourism industry. And, in terms of what we do want to do is make sure that the people that we have working in the tourism industry, that we have the right, we help businesses as much as we can to retain those people, to manage to grow and develop those people, and have those people contributing as much as possible to the business.